All right, well, let's talk about the second topic then. Nvidia announcing plans to invest 500 billion over the next 4 years to build AI supercomputers entirely within the United States. This initiative includes constructing manufacturing facilities in Texas in partnership with Foxconn in Houston, and Wistron in Dallas, with mass production expected to commence in 12 to 15 months. Additionally, Nvidia's Blackwell AI chips have already begun production at Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company's plant in TSMC in Phoenix, Arizona. CEO Jensen Huang emphasizes that this domestic expansion aims to meet the growing demand for AI infrastructure, strengthen supply chain resilience, and bolster the US's position in the global tech landscape. And obviously, this aligns with Trump's push for increased domestic manufacturing, especially in this crazy trade war that he started with China. What do you make of this? Is this brilliant? Is this brilliant result of Trump's tariff strategy, or is it more bullshit hot air?
Well, you know what I'm going to say. I mean, yeah, there's a few things that's like, I'm so sick of discussing this guy, Trump. Like, honestly, this looks like an Nvidia story. It's just another Trump story, right? Trump loves it when companies basically make him look good. And so this is classic totalitarian stuff where these companies line up to make announcements that Trump can make hay out of and then take credit for it. So I'll note a few things here, right? The biggest of which is that Joe Biden, remember that guy, he actually passed something called the CHIPS Act, which was an act of Congress that that basically funded the development of a domestic semiconductor industry in the United States. And so when I look at something like this, when I look at, some of the announcements from OpenAI a while ago about building big data centers, but this one in particular, if the announcement is being made in April, 3 months into Donald Trump's term, and, the factory is already nearly built, guess what? It did not start on January 20th. And in fact, this had a lot of funding from an act of the previous Democratic president, which I believe at the moment, Donald Trump is trying to eliminate the CHIPS Act. So, if anything, he is making it harder to do this sort of thing. But sure, try to call it a win. And of course, I guess there's this element in which you'd say maybe the tariffs are working in a very narrow sense, except that now semiconductors have an exemption, right? But sure, if you have a lot of tariffs and you have a very big market, you are encouraging a certain amount of manufacturing in the United States. But the final point I'd make on this, because like I said, this is a Trump story. The creation of semiconductors requires a lot of very specialized materials that are often known as rare earth minerals. And the supply chain, the mining and refinement of rare earth minerals, there's a country that has a near monopoly on that. And Chris, can you guess what country that is?
Australia?
No, it's a country called China.
In
right?
China?
And so
Okay.
China has a near monopoly on the export, mining, refinement, and export of rare earth minerals. Without them, you're not making any semiconductors, no advanced semiconductors. And China just last week, as a result of the Trump-initiated trade war, has announced new export restrictions on rare earth minerals. And if the US continues down its path of antagonizing China in trade, you can bet that these facilities are not going to have the raw materials they need to produce these advanced chips in the United States. So to me, this is just like, it makes me sick, really. Like it's just part of the sort of downward spiral of the US. And to see this as a positive announcement of like an investment, to me, it's just a load of nonsense.
Wait, I don't understand. You're saying that building manufacturing bases in the US will take years and years to execute, and you're saying that the world is somehow interdependent and there is global supply chains that can't be unwound. I don't really understand what you're saying. I thought we could just throw up tariffs on everything and it'd be fine. I'm a bit
Yeah, I know. I'm
confused.
a crazy, radical, far left globalist. Me and George Soros, we go to our local, Elders of Zion meeting and we plot how to take down the white man. That's what we're doing.
I've tried for many years to make thoughtful, eloquent, articulate, considered arguments to my friendly neighborhood MAGA apologists. And, if you notice the last episode, I've arrived at, this is dumb, they're dumb, and I'm now arriving at, if you believe them, you're dumb. I mean, and I don't have any words left to mince. You talked about the tariffs might, in some narrow sense, encourage manufacturing back in the, no, they won't. Because nobody
No.
for a second believes that these tariffs are just going to be sustained. that they're going to be implemented properly, that they're going to survive beyond, the dead downturn and the midterms and the next administration. No one believes that. And manufacturing takes years to occur. And not to mention the interdependence, rare earth minerals. There's no people in the US willing to do these jobs. So they're going to be automated. So it doesn't affect jobs at all. It just, the whole thing is stupid. I found myself in the last week arguing with people in comments, and one of them said something along the lines of, we were having what I thought was trying to be a constructive conversation. And he said something about, well, the LGBTQ plus agenda, blah, 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 and my kids, and I don't care if he burns the whole economy down. And this came out of nowhere. And I was like, oh, okay. You're a moron and there's nothing left to say. So, and this is where I find myself with most of these conversations lately. If you're still holding on hope after the disappearing of innocence, after the completely incompetent tariff rollouts, after the clear shakedowns and blackmails and the defunding of NATO, which apparently is about to happen, you're just a moron. There's nothing left to say about it.
Well, I mean, moron is kind in a way. I read this powerful quote, which is, if you ever wondered what you would be doing if you were a regular German citizen in the 1930s, it's whatever you're doing right now. It's not like fascism just sort of wakes up one day and announces like, congratulations, you're now living in a fascist state. It happens in fast slices, increments where, all the norms are taken away, all the institutions are taken away. There's a book that was written after World War II, after the Holocaust, called The Banality of Evil, right? And that's what it talks about. It's like evil, it's not like some person in devil horns who has no redeeming characteristics, who, eats children for breakfast. No, it's regular people who let themselves get swept up in this wave. And that's what's happening.
The problem is, Yaniv, that when you reach for Hitler, people assume you're exaggerating. And they assume that, oh my God, every comment thread becomes about Hitler. And oh, this is just, silly discussion and it's now hyperbole and blah, blah, blah. And the problem is it's not Hitler until it's Hitler. And the guy is literally ignoring the Supreme Court right now. Right now.
Yeah.
Okay? He's holding a press conference with his friend, dictator, smirking and smiling and sniveling, while the Steve Millers of the world are like, I mean, this guy, he's literally an incel, on the world stage, mincing words about what the Supreme Court demanded that they do. This is not a false alarm. What's the word? This is not
There's no drill.
Not a drill. Thank you. This is not a drill. He is testing the limits of executive power. He is ignoring the Supreme Court. He is sending immigrants to basically to terrorist concentration camps. And he has, in a recent interview, was asked, what about American citizens? And he said, why not? If they're the worst of the worst, why not? It's not a concentration camp with ovens, and it's not trains. And so we're not allowed to call it what it is. I mean, like, it has to be exactly the same as before.
History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So yes, it's not going to be the same. And hopefully the outcome will be a lot less bad. But I also think understanding what happened in Germany is really instructive, because I think people just see a cliche, right? The Nazi Party came into power in 1932. They did not actually start a war until 1939. They did not start building death camps until 1941 or 42. Before that, they had concentration camps, which were not death camps. They were about detaining undesirables, and the conditions there were very bad, but they were not there to exterminate people. And so, these things happen. Even in Nazi Germany, it didn't happen all at once. It happened step by step by step by step by step over a decade. And we are 3 months into this presidency, and when you see the speed with which things are moving, and yes, absolutely, concentration camps are happening, like, you'd be a fool not to see historical parallels.
Here's another signal for you. He's in the Oval Office with his dictator friend, taking a press conference, being asked about this by CNN, like, why are you not going to get this guy brought back to the US? He literally muses out loud, why do I have to answer questions about this? I don't like these questions. You should stop asking me questions like this. And the next question guy was like, oh my God, we love you so much. And you've, got the Nvidia deal and that's so fantastic. It wasn't a question. It was sucking up to dear leader. I mean, he literally, you can see him in real time, Yanev, the seed being planted. I don't need to answer these questions. I don't need to answer to the Supreme Court, and I don't need to answer to this journalist. And so it's happening in real time.
I think it's fair to say we agree.
Yeah.
Shall we move on?
Shall we move on? So the next story we wanted to talk about was
It's always hard to transition from the descent to fascism.
this tech podcast has just become a Trump venting session for everybody.
I hope you feel better.
Before we talk about ChatGPT, let's continue the conversation just a little bit on All In. Sorry, guys, if you hate the politics, we're just going to talk about that for a little bit longer. So, Yanev, I know you hate watching the All In podcast. I think you refuse to do it. I watch it out of morbid curiosity and fascination. I think it's very revealing to see how these billionaires are rationalizing and justifying what the Trump administration is doing. For the first time, they had two people on the show who were articulate and educated and authoritative to cut down their bullshit narratives. They had both David Sachs on the show for the full show as a member of the Trump administration and the ultimate apologist from the tech community, and they had Larry Summers and Ezra Klein on the show from the liberal and progressive side of the world. And they had actually what I think was a fairly good moderator in Jason Calacanis. They had Chamath on the show as well. And Chamath and David were like full-on apologists for the Trump, and Ezra and Larry, of course, were making the point there's an authoritarian and incompetent regime. I thought it was one of the most interesting conversations that I've seen on this topic, period, full stop. Larry Summers, who was the former Treasury Secretary, I believe, talking about the just kind of the ridiculous nature of using tariffs for any outcome, much less the outcomes that have been stated. Ezra Klein talking about this beautiful analogy of how the Iraq war was an unwinnable war because it was actually 5 or 7 different wars. Everyone in the coalition and the political coalitions and the country coalition wanted something different from it. They thought they were fighting a different war. And so it was unwinnable because everybody had different goals. And what Ezra was saying was, hey, Chamath and David, what you guys are saying and all of Trump's surrogates are saying are, there's like 5 different narratives here. It's about reindustrializing the American base. It's about getting better trade deals. It's about rebalancing trade deficits. It's about, punishing countries. It's about this and it's about that. He made this beautiful point about this is 5 or 7 different narratives and none of them line up and none of them work. And David Sachs is, doing his typical, well, this is the way you got to get stuff done. You got to smash heads and you got to, move fast and break things. And, we come from Silicon Valley and we're disruptors. And Ezra had this really beautiful comeback of like, yeah, I'd really love for, things to get done. I agree with you. More things need to get done in government. The problem is the things getting done are fucking dumb. I want good things getting done. These guys are doing dumb things. And so, no, I don't think it's good getting dumb things done. I'm sorry. And, all David Sachs could do was look at the camera with his shit-eating grin because he had no answer for that. Just none. And so it was really quite incredible watching Larry Summers and Ezra Klein school Chamath and David on their own show. It was really, guys, I really encourage you all to watch it because it showed the limits of their intellectual dishonesty when confronted with people who know what they're talking about and know, especially Ezra knows how to make an incredible argument, and Larry was, actually in the role and extremely authoritative. I think it was really just a fantastic conversation. And then the last point I'll make about this, and I'd love to get your feedback on it, Yanev. I saw Chamath talk about, one of the things he said is just beautiful takedown by Ezra. He's like, what you don't understand, Ezra, and what you don't understand, Larry, is when the Biden administration was in and I was doing all of this incredible stuff around energy production, and they wouldn't even take my call and they wouldn't even listen to me about what we needed. And now what's happening is I had a top business leader in another country calling me on behalf of the country's leader, asking what they can do to make, give Trump what he wants so that they can bend over backwards to meet Trump's demands. And this administration, they listen to me and they listen and they're getting all of these concessions from all of these countries. And Larry and Ezra between them said some version of, yeah, they take your call because it's corrupt and nepotism and like insider trading. And what you don't know, Chamath, is they're calling you for a short-term reprieve to figure out how to deal with this psychopath. But what you're not getting is the other 5 calls they're making to other countries to figure out the long-term way of routing around the United States. And
Yeah.
Chamath like just had no fucking answer for that.
He said the quiet part out loud, really, didn't he?
Right, exactly. And that connected something to Bill Maher, as that happened this week as well. Bill Maher was like, ostensibly a liberal champion, although he's become progressively crazy. He's like, I was invited to have dinner with Trump, and guess what? The crazy person that tweets crazy stuff, he wasn't there. He was reasonable and he was thoughtful and he laughed at my jokes and I was making fun of him, and he was completely reasonable and rational, and I don't know why he's not like that in public. I think he just plays a crazy person in public. And both of these guys,
Doesn't that make it worse?
but both of these guys, what they're not understanding is, yeah, Trump will listen to rich, influential media personalities because that's who Trump respects. And it's corruption in its finest. It's not a rules-based system. It's a relationship-based system. That's called corruption. And what he doesn't respect and has no empathy for is people who are weak, who are vulnerable, who need help, who need consistency, who don't know how to call the White House. And these people have no goddamn self-awareness. None.
Yeah.
They're so smug the way they talk. They intellectualize and rationalize all of the corruption. And they're just, as I keep saying lately, the last 2 episodes, they're just fucking dumb. I have nothing more articulate or thoughtful to say about it anymore.
They're not dumb, though. I think, this is just I'm going to keep my response short because it's just the same thing as I would have said, as I said to the previous topic, which is, if you wonder what you would have been doing in Germany in the early 1930s, it's whatever you're doing right now. They're not dumb. They are human, and they are selfish, and they are greedy, and they are vain, and they kind of like what's happening because for them it's a good thing, right? And it's flattering. Chamath, it's great. It must feel great to get calls from world leaders. Genuinely. I've got an ego to be important, to feel important, right? That feels good.
When I say they're dumb, it's the inability to look past the emotional gratification for some of the people in the Facebook
So that's
comments.
not dumb. That is lacking in self-awareness. That I would certainly agree with. Yeah.
We can use all sorts of eloquent language. You're cheering on the end of democracy in a rules-based system because you feel good. We can use all sorts of beautiful psychological.
It'll probably make you rich.
Yeah, but it's like global warming. You're trading the economy for the climate. Here you're trading a safe democratic world order for you feeling good and your bank account growing. That is dumb. That doesn't need any more clever words than that.
Yeah, but I think it's worth understanding the motivations, right? It's not just like, hoop derp, I'm stupid, right? It is all of these human weaknesses, right? That are culminating in this, right? And fear. And, there's another one, which is, I listened to a podcast a little while about the psychology of being in a cult, right? And, it was about doomsday cults where, the leader says, on this date, on the 16th of April, the world will end. And then the 16th of April comes and goes, and the world doesn't end. Now, what would you think as a non-cult member would happen is that the cult would dissolve. They'd be like, oh, we were lied to. But no, what happens is they double down because there is this sort of psychological sunk cost fallacy. You've invested so much of your identity into this cult that the idea that the dear leader was wrong is an attack on the very core of your identity. So instead, you make excuses for them, right? You will accept whatever bullshit they tell you because you are so deeply, deeply in the cult. And I think, that psychology is fascinating and it is highly relevant to people who support Trump from, the sort of MAGA person on the street all the way through to someone like Sachs or Chamath, right? Which is that they've invested their identity in this guy. And so no matter what he does, no matter how stupid his shit is, they are psychologically driven to defend it and in fact to double down. And that's what's happening.
Yaniv, it's clear you have much more patience and thoughtfulness
I've got no patience
to describe this than I have left. I'm sorry if I'm being reductive or whatever. You're right. All of that is right. And I'm so exhausted with it that the only word I've got left is it's dumb. And I just really, I don't want to deal with these people anymore or try to rationalize their behavior anymore. It just feels like they're trading their children's future. They're trading the future of civilization.
Let me suggest a new word for you, which is evil, right? Like I feel like we're too slow to use that word because it's sort of associated with some sort of cartoon villainy. But all of these actions you're talking about, the harm that they cause, it's evil. And so how about we stick with that one?
I think, like the Hitler example, though, people just gloss over it because they assume it's hyperbole.
Yeah, but like if not now, then when, right? Like again, evil people aren't sitting there like eating babies for breakfast. That's just a total caricature of what evil is. This is what's happening. This is how it happens. It's happening now.
Yep. You're right. It's evil.
All right. Now, for another one of our famous awkward segues where we talk about the death of Western civilization, then we talk about the latest tech news again.